Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one drink that we rule them all. Hope you remember your towels. Get your Ulu fingers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the pit tank. To the pit tank. The Rocky Mountain pit tank.
Hi, I'm Guy. Uh-oh. And Troy is muted.
Hi, I'm Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.
Your face geek twit book sized podcast.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about social media saturation and overload. So we've talked a little bit before about social media being, like I'm overloaded with social media. All of you people are just, I hate you people. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the proliferation overload. You've got your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I had to join. I didn't have to join. I just joined one called Alignable, which is for local businesses. You've got, Twitch, and now we've just got all of these. And then you've got like the other parts, the Parler and I can't remember what the other one was called, but there's a bunch of these splinter groups now. And
I just pulled up a list. Clubhouse, Rumble, MeWe, Gab, Triller, WT Social, Valis, Flip, Popbase, Alpha, Yubo, Peanut, Houseparty. I never heard of any of these. So this is like 101 social networks.
Right.
List.
So, and it's one of those, how do you reach them all? We are using StreamYard here just to reach 3. And we're getting onto Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. And and if it wasn't for something specific like StreamYard here, we would have to record this show, upload it, and then upload it, then upload it. And it's like, it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. As a small business owner, in order to get good reach now, you pretty much spend 2 of your 7 days working your social media. Because it's, Instagram, and for an artist, I have Instagram, and I have, so the thing we want to kind of talk about is it a good thing that we have competition in this market? Is it really a good thing? So we're going to talk about that today. That's what we're kind of discussing. That's where we're headed.
Mm-hmm. We have an artist friend who, enlists his sister to help run some of his social media for him.
For that very reason.
Yeah, because it's
pretty much need a separate person now to run social media, and that needs to be literally their full-time job.
And if you're not making a lot of money, it's hard to pay somebody to do that part of it.
Mm-hmm. And since so many of us live and die by social media, that's even more of a problem, and that is a concern. I happen to have been remarkably lucky in that. I don't need, my wife's making enough money right now, not a lot, but enough money that I can not, in fact, have to take every job that comes through my door, even if it's $1 and a cookie, and that has been a game changer. It's big, it's a big deal, but it also means I don't make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And until I figure out the right combination of these things, I'm not going to make a lot of money, because it's just, I am yelling in a hurricane. And until I figure out how to make my voice louder in the hurricane, nobody's going to hear me. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter whether they like my work or not. They're not going to hear me. So that's what we're going to work on today, is we're going to talk a little bit about social media saturation. So I'm going to start with the concept and theory of competition, direct competition.
Explain capitalism.
Right? We're going to talk a little bit about capitalism here, because I'm not 100% sure that in this particular instance, capitalism is good. You know what I mean? I'm not 100% sure that it's the best choice. And I say that because, like, let's just take Facebook for example. I'm connected to the majority of my family through Facebook and most of my friends, right? It is a remarkably easy thing to just click one click, and all of my buddies in my role-playing group get a message that we're playing on Saturday, but the game has been moved to 4:00. And I know that all my buddies will get that information. But now we've got, Facebook is decidedly one of the two political parties, and there's an accusation that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to address whether it's true or not. That's not even in the purview of this discussion. But what it does do is it means that anybody in our role-playing group who is not of that political alignment has left. And now I can grab all my buddies with one click, and then I have to call this person and call this person and then call this person. And, it's like, so it gets back to might as well just spend all of Saturday calling everybody because it's the easier way to deal with it, And as we start splitting out into groups like that, the personal effect, I feel like, is that's what I feel like is the personal problem,
Well, we're going backwards in our progress because it used to be, before the internet, you did have to call everybody.
Yeah.
And then you'd plan it much further in advance. So at the end of one Saturday game, you'd ask everybody, hey, are you going to be here next Saturday? And you get your yay or nays. And then if something happened in the middle of the week, then that's when you have to call everyone and get the word out. And
right.
like all of a sudden we get email. Hey, this is cool. I can add everybody to one email and now email everybody. But not everybody checks their email instantaneously because this was before smartphones.
And servers are slow sometimes.
Servers are slow.
Even with email and even with modern technology, I know that you have emailed me and I've gotten it 2 days later.
And so, but it was still a heck of a lot easier than calling everyone. So we were all excited about that. And then here comes smartphone. Then comes texting, and then you could text everybody, and then smartphones. And now with like Facebook Messenger and Facebook groups, it's near instantaneous. And now we're having to go back to the not near instantaneous and take a step backwards and have to be on multiple social medias and multiple groups to contact people, right. Which is doable, but irritating because you would think we've made it to this point. Why do we have to go to another point? And we still have a couple of people not on Facebook, and those are ones we have to call.
Yep. Well, and that's the other thought process is, you were saying we're going backwards. The thing is that there was an evolution to this. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, when we'd all organize our games, even when we had email, it was more of a dictatorship and less of a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
I would start out with, okay, guys, we are moving our game to 4:00 Saturday. And then Troy has to say, I'm sorry, Guy, I am going to have to dissent from your decision. You know what I mean? Because that's the way it would have to be. Now, because it's instantaneous, you can pretty much put onto social media, hey guys, Godzilla is showing at the theater and I kind of want to go. What do you think? And then everybody can go, well, we can move it to this. Oh, we can move it to this time. And you get sort of a democratic approach where it moves to the most efficient location, the best possible time, because you can spend an hour or two on your social media with everybody bouncing ideas back and forth. On the Sunday prior, that kind of interaction would take all week.
Yeah, and it's even faster than that in some cases. If everybody has the time to engage, it's almost like having a group phone call.
Yep. And so there's a real benefit to having this fast speed connectivity to everybody. Mm-hmm. But then, Facebook didn't decide. We decided to also broadcast our political beliefs and religious beliefs. The two things you're not supposed to talk about over dinner.
Well, didn't we don't 100% try to avoid political stuff because that'd be impossible, but we do try to steer away from things that we have some leeway on to a degree. But wasn't the whole creation of Parler due to the fact that someone, I won't name names, did something really stupid and got themselves banned from Facebook, and therefore Parler then spawned into creation to give this person an outlet? Or did the
Well,
Parler exist before said person was banned from Facebook? Because I don't know a lot about Parler.
yeah, I believe that Parler came about as a reaction to it, but I think it was boiling over. The problem as I see it is there is sort of a bunch of vetted news and there's a bunch of non-vetted news, and it seems like, and I'm trying very hard not to get into this political quagmire.
Right. Exactly.
But it seems like that the non-vetted news is believed by a particular part of this, a section of our environment, and that happens to be counter to one or the other of these groups, and so they've splintered off the group, and it kind of is that issue. I'm noticing that I'm getting I'm slow on transmission thing again. So just in case I start.
Okay. Yeah.
And I also feel like the people who prefer Parler tend to be people who already have a belief that large organizations are a threat. They already tend to believe that there are a number of conspiracies already in play, which neither one of those things are necessarily untrue. So I feel like the people who created Parler fed on that, coming in and going, we promise to agree to all conspiracies. We promise to agree that everybody big is evil, except that Parler is also a big group. So it's kind of like, well, okay, so I don't get that one necessarily. So, but that's okay. I don't need to get it. It's not the point.
So since neither of us knew, I went ahead and quickly looked it up. It looks like Parler was launched August 2018. So it did exist pre-ban. However, it looks like, I don't know if this is because the ban didn't happen until, from what I see here, June 5th and of 2021. Nope, 2020 actually. June 5th of 2020 is when the ban happened, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the CEO was fired on January 29th, 2021, and it's kind of hazy on that information, which I'm wondering if it was at that point that it got more one-sided.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It does not. I haven't seen any ads, but everything I've heard about it doesn't sound like a site that I would do good on.
Well, so a long time ago,
in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. I remember that. I mean, and I'm talking about a long time ago. I think I might have still been in Japan at the time.
Okay, I thought you meant pre-BBS, but not that long ago. Okay.
No. There was, so the accusations that Facebook is one political side is not new.
Right.
There once was a time where they were going to make, and it's not new for specifically our political conservatives to decide that whatever is out there and accepted in use is liberal and then branch their own version of it. A long time ago, they made Conservapedia, which is Wikipedia, except without liberals doing the editing. And that was kind of weird because I thought the nature of Wikipedia was that you could go in, anybody could edit it, including conservatives. So I couldn't understand why that, but I guess what had happened was the conservatives would go in and edit an article, like at the time it was George Bush who was president. And the article would say that George Bush did X, Y, or Z. The conservatives would go in and instead of neutralizing the language, they would just delete the phrase so that it said that George Bush didn't do that. Because of course, all of our media is biased. There's nothing all we need to do is If I say George Bush attacked Iraq, that's a bias in and of itself. It doesn't matter whether there's an inherent bias in just those words.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to come up with absolutely neutral language. And so I kind of get that. But one of the things that I find interesting is they would, it'd say George Bush, I'm just giving this as an example, George Bush attacked Iraq, and they would wipe that out. So the attack on Iraq would be gone, as if George Bush never interacted with Iraq, as if Desert Storm didn't occur. And that Wikipedia couldn't let stand. They had Desert Storm is a thing. It did occur. And so they'd reinstate it, which would then get the conservatives saying, see, the liberals just keep putting the left side story back in, except that wasn't what was going on. What was going on was they were effectively obliterating Desert Storm, the entire war, from connection to George Bush at all,
Mm-hmm.
when he was commander in chief. And even from a neutral point, there is a connection between George Bush and Desert Storm. So they made Conservapedia, at which time they still put Desert Storm in, but they highlighted it as starting from Saddam Hussein, which may also be absolutely legit, but kind of downplayed any connection to George Bush, which also may be legit. But my thought was, why didn't they just do that to the original article? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I've doing some quick research here while we're talking, and there's an article written on September in 2020, which I find interesting because this was, of course, pre-Facebook ban on the past president. And the article is about how Democrats were denouncing Facebook because they were getting very upset that it was becoming a right-wing echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO or whoever it was they were talking to with Facebook is like, we are 100% unbiased, and our algorithms are set up to be such. But the reason right-wing groups were getting more speech time is because it says that their topics and how their speech patterns and their choice of words hits people on a visceral level.
Yep.
And it's easier to trigger reactions and get responses from people when you're touching on hot topic buttons like nationality, protection, the other, anger, and fears. And because that's a popular tactic with that angle of politics from that side, you're gonna get a lot more response from it. And you're not going to get it from people who are being more passive and less angry.
Yeah.
So,
and that is actually that's a key important thing. I have a theory. It's a demon, a dancing demon. Something that's right there.
Yeah.
I have a theory that is actually somewhat backed up by political scientists, people who study politics. There was a.
I think Parler's hacking your feed now. You're doing your robot stuff.
But my theory here is that in 1968, we had a specific sea change in the Republican Party, which it had changed over and flip-flopped from the Democrats. The conservative groups in the Democrats moved to the Republican side. The Republican groups all gained a specific concept of terrifying the public into voting for them. This was specifically targeted, and it was brought through by a specific thread, and it got ground, and it worked. And because it worked, they keep doing it. The Democrats followed suit. Now we have sort of this, you have to vote for us or else terrifying things will occur. And they generate things that fit our belief systems. If you're leaning to the left, they terrify you by doing these 5 things. If you lean to the right, it's these 5 things. But the problem is that I believe that the Republicans have been doing it longer and they're better at it. The Democrats just kind of, what's going on? And they got lost after a while and they finally caught on. But they're good at those keywords. They're really good at keyword hits that, and actually reading that sort of feeds to a thought process that I have had all along, which is I never unfriended my conservative friends because I'm liberal leaning. Mm-hmm. I've never unfriended my conservative friends. And every post where it's like, this post will be deleted, it has been deleted by Facebook 16 times. So read it before it's deleted again. I'll see those posts show up. They
never get deleted.
Over and over, and they never get deleted. And so I'm like, clearly they're just using words that make you read it and go, oh no, we've got to read it quickly before Zuckerberg pulls it out. And
it's that old salesman trick of, this is our last car we have, when they have like 100 more in the back.
Car.
Better buy it.
And that's the one that I can easily see as a smoking gun that people are being manipulated verbally on Facebook. So I find it difficult to believe that either the Democrats or I actually, and I don't usually like to agree with Mark Zuckerberg. However, I actually agree with him. I don't think there's any possible way they could make an algorithm that says, look for all Republican posts and wipe them out. I think, because I've had all kinds of crap happen to me. I've had my shows pulled. Last night or 2 nights ago, I was writing a very, very long post. And in the middle of it, it disappeared. And it said, oops, something went wrong. And I had written like 2 pages. It was a very long post. And I had to start all over again.
I've had that happen a couple of times. I've recently started copying so I can paste it if it happens.
Well, yeah. It also is better because if you start in MS Word, it will give you grammar help too.
Yeah, it's just
useful. So... but the point that I'm kind of trying to get at is I think people who are already kind of, they'll get in there and they'll get into their heads by saying, Facebook's removing things. And then you'll type a post and it'll vanish because glitch. And they'll be like, oh, I was writing an anti, yes. Well, and Lynn, you're absolutely right. Well, it's the same thing we talk about too. It's like it's better to just do it separately. But I think that if you're already predisposed to the concept and the idea that that they are trying to hurt you, then when the post crashes, which it does sometimes because it's a program, you believe, especially if you were writing a political post, you're inclined to believe that it was intentional. And I think that's what's happening.
And if it's a really long one, they would probably not bother trying to do it again. If they believe it was done on purpose.
Yeah. I remember, and I haven't been able to find this because it was downplayed by the media. I seem to remember about, I want to say 2 years ago, Trump put a threat on all of the social media that if they didn't do something about the censorship, he was going to shut them down. And I remember it because I remember thinking, I don't think he can. I think that's an empty threat. But the media groups responded with all of these hate speech search engines, which then promptly started targeting people who were writing hate speech. And if you, again, back to if you're predisposed to believe that that's an attack, I think that exacerbated this whole thing. It got worse at that point in time because then you really did have Facebook and Twitter intentionally pulling stuff out, but they were originally not going to do any of that. That was the intention. And I can't ever find his tweet or his post or whatever because it was so downplayed. So if you ever come across it, by the way, Troy, please send me the link because I've brought this up in a number of conversations on when I've been talking
I
to
believe a lot of his stuff. I don't. You can't access it directly through them anymore because he's gone.
He's been banned, right?
But of course, people do screen captures and stuff, so it could exist out there. So
I do believe I saw a screen capture of it anyway, so likely it exists. But anyway, back to my original point. If we start branching, though, then we can't communicate as well. And like I said, I've got now like 5 or 6 different social media pages that I have to update regularly. And they all have different jobs, you know. Got to go to LinkedIn and update my personal bio, and then I've got to go to Alignable and update my local bio, and then I've got to, and I've got to make a post on both. And then I've got to go to Facebook and go to my professional art page, and I've got to post a piece of artwork to my Instagram and to my Facebook profile.
And then you got to go do real estate stuff.
And then I've got to go do my real estate stuff, which then has to go out on Twitch and onto Discord. And, it's like, by the time my day is over, I don't have any time left to draw. So I'm not creating as much artwork anymore because I'm spending most of my day on social media posting stuff. And it's like, it's a little bit harder than it needs to be. I do really, really want to give Restream and StreamYard epic props, because it is really nice to have the ability to do one broadcast and have it go everywhere at the same time and be able to see.
Now I feel like I just started a YouTube video, because that's all the ads I ever see anymore is some guy going, the reason I like StreamYard is, and then that's about the point I can click skip ad.
Right.
And so maybe StreamYard can pay us to be that annoying guy that pops up in the beginning of videos. Talking to you, StreamYard.
Well, we're bringing in Lynn from YouTube. Which is great, because actually for some reason I'm having a problem bringing in people from YouTube on Restream. So I don't know what that problem is.
It's you.
Yeah, that's me. I can get them in from Twitch and I can get them in from Facebook, but for some reason it's crashing in on YouTube. I'm not allowed. You're not allowed to post on YouTube's videos.
They don't like artists that draw.
I think I might have disabled comments a long time ago when I posted some video about making art and somebody came in there and just trolled the whole thing. Yeah,
that was me.
Yeah, it was you. When you have exactly, well, good. I'm glad you joined us.
Yes, we're glad you're here.
I'm glad you joined us. But no, that's the other thing. You've got to cultivate it. So, you got to post all these things, and especially when you're dealing with business transactions. I'm dealing with business transactions. You get onto Alignable. And Alignable is local, so it's like LinkedIn, but it's specifically for people close to you to share business information and try to shuffle business back and forth between small business groups. And it's designed for small business groups.
Support the community.
You get a troll on there who, I hate guy, he sucks,
Again, that was me.
So. Yeah, Troy gets on there and says, I hate guy because he sucks. I got to go through and make sure I catch it and delete it before anybody else sees it, because it's just going to be negative, negative response to things. And, and so you've got to go through and cultivate on top of doing all this. It is pretty daunting.
And the professionals say you don't want to do every social media or a bunch, because then you start to feel spammy.
Right.
So I think what we're doing is the right choice at the right time. We picked what we consider to be the 3 biggest, best outlets to our audience.
Yep.
Because we feel like these 3 are our audience focus.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm sure there's at least a couple of geeks that are probably on Parler that like the same stuff we do, but I would say it would be rare to find a large number of that, just because my personal sampling on life has been that that's not their outlet that they enjoy spending their time with. So,
which, I mean, we put the asterisks on there because we do have a couple of people who would be Parler people who are in our role-playing groups.
Yep.
And so we have to put that asterisk on there.
Yeah, so it's always the exception.
Always.
So
humans are full of exceptions. It's the best
but,
part about
yeah.
humans.
But we picked. I think we picked the three. We picked the three that we use, which
Right.
also makes sense. To like, I think Twitch has become not Twitch. Maybe just no. There's something else. The one that likes really short. You only get short videos with TikTok. TikTok's become really big, and I was surprised to find out that Mandy Patinkin actually has a TikTok channel, him and his wife. And what it is his son videotapes them talking and like asking them questions, and is the one who manages it. But that being who Mandy Patinkin is, I'm surprised that the audience of TikTok is interested in that kind of thing too. So that may be something we may end up having to look into at some point. I know it's way outside of our age range.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's and then you have, as let's say you're not even a podcast person. Let's say that you simply are you're simply someone who's a consumer of the geek stuff. Then how do you make a decision out of the 101 different social medias as to which one to go to?
Lynn's commenting that he also reposts some of that to his YouTube.
Oh, next. That would be the place for me to watch it then.
Right. Because I don't know. There's another problem that we're running into. All of them have different rules.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Reddit user. I love Reddit. And it's got explicit rules on different channels. You go to this channel, and if you post this thing, it will be deleted immediately. And that feeds to that too. I've noticed that's another thing that feeds to that bias.
So those rules aren't as universal across the...
No, it depends on the channel. Like for example, as a great example, I post to r/comic strips. I post my spring strip to it. If you post it using the image, or you must post it using the image tab. If you post it using a post and embed the image, it will be deleted.
Okay. Well, for a second, I thought you were talking about videos, like the videos posted to YouTube and Facebook and such. I think those are a bit more universal.
Yeah, there are things like that are more universal, but it's like there are certain things that if you say, I had a shower thought the other day in r/shower thoughts.
To take a shower?
Take a shower. So I posted the shower thought, and it was immediately deleted by a robot because it was an already existing shower thought. And I'm like, do you just have a robot that can seek all of... And so I reworded it a different way, and it immediately deleted it again by the bot as an already existing shower thought. Well, and it didn't. That's not what it said. It said, you have violated one of these 7 rules. And I read all of them, and I'm like, I don't feel like any of these are the rules that I've violated.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, if you feel like this is a dispute, click here. And then it was another bot that said, did you violate rule 1? Yes, no. Okay, how about rule 2? And I'm like, really? You're going to go through, like, there were 12 of them. I'm like, you're going to ask me if I violated each and every rule before you're going to let me talk to a moderator? I'm like, it's not worth my time, especially since it was opening a new window each time. And I was getting to the point where my tabs were getting this small. And it was like, wow. I
remember at one point we got one of the videos posted on Facebook.
Lynn's saying that it's not outside of our age range. We're not talking about Princess Bride being outside of our age range.
No.
We're talking about TikTok probably not being.
Yeah, TikTok being outside of it. Yeah.
So,
and because TikTok usually has the under 20 year audience,
right?
Sort of zeroed in.
Old guys. No matter which way you look at it, we're certainly not what you'd construe as the demographic that people under the age of 20 are going to be watching. We're not fast. We don't move quickly. We don't have some flashy thing we're doing.
We don't scream very loudly and angrily.
We don't scream loudly,
which I've noticed is a trend for all the people my kids watch.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why my kid's on ban right now is because he's starting to pick that up as he does that now. He screams at us at super rude land. Yeah, and so yeah.
It would be funny though for us to do a couple of episodes of us attempting to imitate YouTubers.
Yeah, but see, the difference, Lynn, is that you and I were that same age range at that same time. Did we scream at each other? These are all the things I'm like, I don't remember us.
The first, I'm sure there was a comedian before, probably a few comedians before this person, but I remember when Sam Kinison was hitting popularity. And a lot of people were like, what's the appeal? All he does is scream really loud, angry words. And he had his following, although sizable, was still relatively small compared to other quote unquote famous comedians.
Right.
Right. And I guess you didn't really see a whole lot of that coming in until later.
At least not at night. We were, to be fair, we were in the basement of a bank. Screaming might not have gone so well.
Here, for those who are unaware, that would be for Denver Anime International,
which was the local anime club in the, well, depending on how far back you want to trace its roots, it started in 81 and it converted to the name Dai in 88, 89. And
back in the days of pirated VHS tapes.
Yeah, when that was all it wasn't just pirated, it was
the only way.
Record them off of Japanese TV and then mail them to us in a mailer, and we would watch it in the basement of this bank on Federal, and we were in the basement, and all of us had the TVs. We had one TV and then a bunch of daisy-chained video cassette recorders set up with the best VCRs in the front and the worst VCRs in the back. It was particularly humorous. It was a wonderful time.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on it fondly. I mean, I obviously, since Lynn knows, I've interviewed Murdoch. Someday I will interview you for it. Because all of us, I feel like we're all part of this history, this unique, different history that existed. Yeah, right. Exactly. Half of them were blinking 12 o'clock the entire time, and they would turn the lights off in the room, and then every time the screen would go blank between, for commercial breaks or whatever, the room would just blue blinking. It was like this either asynchronous blue blinking over there from the VCRs.
When you do the interviews, you got to do them
awesome,
so you can have holographic images throughout the museum of these people telling their stories,
right?
Like the way Watchmen had it set up,
right? I thought about playing the videos in the museum, having them actually play. And because what I'll do is I'll bring them here onto StreamYard, and I've got an NDK background for us, and sometimes if they don't want to have their face on there, then I just put, they just come up with just a picture.
You should digitize it like Witness Relocation.
Right. It would sound just like it does whenever I get bad transmission quality here. So anyway, I'm concerned about the amount of effort it takes to wield social media appropriately, especially for small business. Lynn's also in the small business side of things, starting to try to drum up this kind of cultural, what do I want to call it? Like we got to do
I did it.
Good job. So I'll real quickly stop here and say Geek Tank is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, Shiny Garden, because here comes Hexacon, and your mom. So anyway, it's one of those things where I am concerned about how much effort and power it's taking now to keep control of all of our social media, to get the reach that we're looking for. And so that is kind of a concern that I am worried about. And so that's sort of the TLDR on this one, is where I was headed. The other thing is that I don't know if it's a good thing for it to be branching. for us to branch off into our own, even if you do think or believe or don't. But whichever you believe, whether you believe that Facebook is innocent of these claims, or whether you believe that they aren't, splitting our people into two political chambers which do not communicate with one another, I believe is dangerous. I have already heard stories about what us liberals believe that are getting progressively more threatening. And
this was even, it was already happening on Facebook, because you would have people not be friends with people that thought differently.
Right.
So you got both echo chambers already existing in the same channel.
Right.
And now it's worse, because you can't even reach across party lines without going to what's perceived as one party's personal media outlet.
I had this problem really early on. I noticed with a few people in my own, ironically, in my own political sphere, because I actually believe that we're drumming up things that don't exist. I believe that, it's when I was talking to my dad, he didn't seem to fit all of the stuff you heard about. He was very conservative, and it didn't fit what he said. I mean, okay, I didn't necessarily agree with what he was saying, but it didn't sound outrageous. It didn't sound ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It just sounded like he was coming from a different starting point into the logic, and it's okay, sort of thing. But by the time you got the translation of what he was saying, it was imminent threat to certain people. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe that there isn't imminent threat, but I don't know that necessarily my dad was involved in that imminent threat. You know what I mean? I'd be more than willing to believe that there are aspects of our political groups that do, in fact, have imminent threat intentions. I'm absolutely sure of that. But I don't know that necessarily my dad, being a conservative, was buying it. I feel like they were selling him a bill of goods that he bought. And they sort of gloss over the parts that they knew he wouldn't agree with. Mm-hmm. So they gloss those over and make it. And then by the time they sort of present this package, it's easy to present it with, and the liberals want to take away all of this stuff that you like. Mm-hmm. So you really have to double down and defend it.
Which is really dangerous. I mean, the fact that I've got 2 points here. I've had people that are not liberal think that all liberals want to take away guns. And so they're always shocked when they find out that not only that's not exactly the case, that I am for people who are skilled and trained and with good records to own weapons, that I've actually practiced shooting before. And the only reason I don't own a gun is because I understand statistics, and I'm statistically making things more dangerous for people in the house by having one than I am not. And I don't let fear cloud those statistics, which is what people tend to do.
Right.
The other really dangerous thing I've noticed that's been going on, that it seems like not a single family member of mine on the eastern side of the world, Mississippi, other than my mom,
your mom,
and my dad, and possibly an uncle and aunt or two, have been vaccinated. So there's a lot of family that I'm not going to let hang out with my kids because they're 12 and are not yet, or 11, so they haven't hit that point to where they can be vaccinated yet. And so I just trying to diminish the amount of cross-contamination that can happen. Right. And so you lose out on getting to hang out with me if you're not vaccinated in this case. So, and that's because of all the rumors that are going around about vaccinations being harmful. And they're in those echo chambers where they only hear the bad stuff and they don't hear why it's bad information. and they buy into it, and they like, oh, I can't get my vaccine because the vaccine will kill me and turn me into a mutant or make me magnetized or something.
Right. Well, and I follow. I mean, that's another one of those. I have been having long discussions with a friend of mine in Australia who he vacillates between moderate and conservative. Like he just kind of does this number, depending clearly on what information he's getting. But I noticed that he keeps presenting to me, this doctor says that all vaccines will kill you. This doctor says, it verifies that all vaccines will kill you. This doctor has also said that the coronavirus isn't real.
Mhm.
And all of these, like, I mean, legitimate, these guys actually have PhDs behind their name. So I already see that they're, you know, at least the counter information side on this is putting out believable things. But the problem is that everything that he talks about is predicated on the core belief that the US government by nature does evil, nasty things and hides stuff all the time. It's predicated on that belief system. So every time there's an error in the data, or every time there's a mistake made by a scientist, that's not proof that they were human beings. That's proof that they slipped up on the hiding. They failed their misdirection role,
Mhm.
and we caught them in the act. And that's the predicated belief. So anytime you have the CDC said that 10 people died yesterday, they said that 5 people died yesterday. That's proof that the CDC is inflating the numbers instead of proof that somebody just wrote down a 10 instead of a 5. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, and I was trying to quickly find it because I only saw part of the news story and I can't find it. But apparently there was a fairly large company or business where everyone there caught COVID except for the one person who was vaccinated.
right.
And it's kind of like, so is that not evidence to people that they saw this in action now? And it just amazes me. Like, I thought once Herman Cain passed away,
I
that
thought so
side
too.
would go, oh, this is
I went
serious.
and looked it up on Ballotopedia.
Uh-huh.
There have been 15 or 20 Republican lawmakers of one sort or another who
Mhm.
have now died of COVID.
Yes.
And there have been 0 Democrat lawmakers that have died of COVID. And in fact, it came up like Ted Cruz or something said something in Congress saying, isn't that suspicious to you all? And I'm like, yeah, it's suspicious. Why aren't you guys getting vaccinated?
Right.
And all of the conservative friends said, no, idiot. Isn't it suspicious that obviously the Democrats are injecting the Republicans with COVID? And I'm like, how did you get there?
Well, they're obviously wrong. COVID just has political leanings. COVID's
And
making choices on its own.
right. I'm like sitting there going, wait, the Occam's razor on this
Yeah.
is easier. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is. It's a cognitive bias. They're operating on the theory that, and by the way, that's legit. Since the Watergate scandal, the faith in our government hiding stuff has been shook. Because as soon as Watergate came out, we found out about what JFK was doing. We found out about this. We found out about that. And we keep finding out about newer and more advanced secrets that are going on in our government. It's not like this is an unfounded thing, but I think that people are playing on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lynn, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. This house is vaccinated, but we've got an 11-year-old who can't get vaccinated. So there's nothing we can do.
Yet.
Not yet.
Yep.
But he doesn't.
My guys are
until February, so there's nothing I can do until February, or until they drop the age down.
My guys are not fans of needles, but yet they are excited and are wishing for the day to get the vaccine.
Right, mine too. I'm like, I'm having a hard time getting your MMR vaccine. Are you sure you? But he also understands his social obligation.
Mhm.
He needs to be vaccinated so that he can, not be worried about wandering through airports and not be worried about being put on a plane. There was legitimate concern about him seeing his grandfather.
Yep.
But now that concern has transferred to his grandmother because she also is, one of his grandmothers is 70, the other one's 61, but the one that's 61 has cerebral palsy. So she's in a risk group.
Mhm.
Both of them are vaccinated. Both of the grandparents, in fact, my dad was even vaccinated, which surprised me. But he didn't have. I actually the more I think about it, the more I thought, well, yeah, the VA came out and vaccinated him. So I think that was more of a, specialist. Davis, you need to be vaccinated.
Yeah, and when you've been in the military, you do
Yeah,
it
at some
for
point in time, you're like, yes,
it's your
sir.
duty. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's the way they got him to do it.
Mhm.
Although I don't know, he never complained about it. He never griped about it. He never made an argument, or you know what I mean. And my dad was never one to not be vocal about these things.
Mhm.
But cognitive dissonance is definitely a thing. He believed firmly in chemtrails.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up because I remember you mentioning that to me.
And I actually explained how a jet engine works in detail. And he'd go, oh, okay. And then 2 weeks later, but don't you think that it's a little weird that there weren't this many contrails when I was a kid? And I'm like, well, there technically weren't this many contrails before 1995, Dad. And he goes, don't you think that's a little suspicious? And I'm like, you mean when the FAA dropped the operational ceiling by 300 or by 20,000 feet, which put all the airplanes in the water band of our atmosphere? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. To me, jet engines make clouds. That's what they do.
Mhm.
And they don't make clouds if you're above the water level of the atmosphere. If you're in the water level, they make clouds. If you're higher than the water level, they don't. And the only people who control the altitude is air traffic controllers. Because a plane doesn't care if it's lower or higher. It'll fly either way. But they've got a spacing gap. And yeah. And he's like, well, why did they change it in 1995? And I'm like, because the engines got quieter. I mean,
Mhm.
before that, you didn't have them that low because planes would then go when your windows, and
Yeah.
so now mode 3 engines are really quiet. That's cool.
Yeah, where I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, the airport is like a 5-minute drive. It's like right there, and not quite the middle of the city, but it's right there, and there's houses everywhere. And I remember in the 80s, those airplanes taking off. This is loud.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons we built DIA here in Colorado, was because everybody was groaning and moaning about Stapleton.
Yep.
Makes that Constitution saving throw. I love our people. That's all I'm gonna say. Is like, we got a Constitution saving throw.
That's right. Do you want to make it with a bonus or with a penalty?
Right.
Your
Which
choice.
way do you want to do on this one?
Mhm.
Go on ahead.
Yeah.
Your choice. So yeah, I don't know. Cognitive dissonance is a thing.
Well, even
But
our friend who's in our group, he'll seem like he gets it after some explaining.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, it's gone again.
Yeah. And he's arguing it again.
Mhm.
One of the famous ones that we argue about a lot is socialized medicine. That's a big one that we argue over.
Mhm.
He is absolutely 100% on board with socialized medicine until he listens to the radio for a couple of weeks. And then I have to once again explain socialized medicine is not Marxist socialism, and we don't want to march everybody out and kill them all into mass graves. and I have to back him off of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, socialized medicine, and he's like, well, it doesn't work anywhere. I'm like, it worked perfectly in Japan. I was there. I was on their socialized medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that still always gets me about Japan is that I had an fMRI at my hospital in Nowheresville.
Mm-hmm.
There's only like one fMRI in Colorado. But this little podunk town about the size of Longmont had an fMRI. Because it worked better.
Yeah.
fMRIs are MRIs that have video. They're video MRIs. Mm-hmm. Instead of just taking a photograph, it shows video, so you could see the brain activity and you can see stuff. fMRIs are great.
Get your information right away.
Right.
I wonder how many people that are refusing to take vaccines would actually get it if the vaccine was being charged for. If part of their
that's interesting. I wonder too. I wonder if that's adding to the suspicion level.
It's free, so there must be something wrong with it.
Right? Nothing's ever free.
Not because they're trying to keep society from imploding in on itself.
I mean, honestly, technically speaking, I pay for my kid to get just the normal run of vaccines that every kid gets.
Mm-hmm.
I pay for that.
Right. Those should be free too.
Yeah, I think all of it should be free.
Right. I mean, the way I look at it is, if you want to take the humanity aspect out of it and try to turn this just into a business thing, humans are a resource, and you should keep your resource pool healthy and happy and fed and alive. So why make them have to do that part and then still have to struggle? And I think the part comes into the happy. People don't care if they're happy. So it's like, why don't you take the money to make you happy and pay for the stuff to keep you alive? And they're like, oh, this is a good business model because they have to do that or they die.
And then we get to keep the money that would normally be paid to make them happy.
Yeah.
And then, that becomes part of our profits. And I get that. I mean, I see how that works. And I don't know how we're not all unified against that threat. I mean, I constantly say things like a mandatory purchaser breaks capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. If you are required to purchase my product under fear of death, then I will charge whatever I want. And there's no way that voting with your dollar or voting with or the free market can control that.
Mm-hmm.
It won't control it. And so we see that with the medical system, with now our college systems, stuff like that. The prices then just completely run out of control. Housing is doing the same thing. You have to have a house. You can't just live on the streets. So it starts to run out of control too. Mandatory purchasers damage capitalism. They ruin capitalism. And so I keep telling people, I'm a capitalist. I believe in socialized medicine, and they don't get it.
Mm-hmm. They're
like, that can't possibly be true. And I'm like, but it is. It's ruining capitalism by having mandatory purchasers. That destroys the capitalist function. I can't just say, hang on, I'm having a heart attack, but I would like to spend the next couple of days real quickly researching hospitals for the best price.
I'm looking for a Groupon.
Right. I need to find the Groupon. No.
Yeah.
If you're having a heart attack, they're going to take you to the hospital where, and not only that, they've set up the entire system now where you don't even know.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before. The thing that really bugs me about it is the people that think that taxpayer money is being saved by having in this version, because what happens is people can't afford their bills. They build up a $500,000 debt, die, and now the taxpayers have to pay the $500,000 debt because that's how the system's set up. Otherwise, the hospital fails.
And we can't have hospitals.
Hospital fails.
So the government bails them out,
Yep.
which is again breaking capitalism.
Yep.
And it's not appropriate for us to go the way of, well, then let's let hospitals fail, because you can't actually, hospitals are a critical service.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't let them fail.
Yeah.
So the idea of just saying, let the hospitals fail until finally they figure it all out, means that entire neighborhoods are going to have people just dying left and right of, the common cold because there was no hospital, to cover them.
And the $500,000 story is based on a real story, and I've got the bill to show it. So, and it's actually over $500,000.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
We bought this house in 2012, and we bought it for $174,000 because that's where the market was. It's now worth almost $500,000. When we talk about the individual you're talking about, that was a few years ago.
2014.
And that was $500,000 then.
Then, yes.
And we're already kind of moving into that'd be still quite a bit more now. And that's more than this house.
And this was one of those things that $500,000 bill could have been avoided if they would have been every year dumping anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 into yearly checkups and maintenance.
Right.
It would have been caught. It would have been solved. That money wouldn't have been there.
That's the other thing that people don't see about socialized medicine. If you
Is
have socialized medicine, people catch the cancer at stage 1 instead of catching the cancer at stage 4, where it's going to be a year-long, horrible, miserable fight that ultimately will be lost. At stage 1, it's gone. You go through a little bit of chemotherapy. You're over it. It goes away. Yes, sometimes it comes back. But again, if you're on regular checkups, they catch it again and they get rid of it.
And regular checkups get skipped.
Have regular checkups. You literally could live 100 years with cancer recurring every like 5 years. You know what I mean? You really could. But instead, if they catch it at stage 4, you spend 1 year racking up phenomenal bills and then die.
And then it's not just that. Like you almost suffered from this. I remember reading a story several years ago about a man who died from an infection from an impacted tooth thing.
I had the same thing with this tooth right here.
Because he was on the lowest of the low end of incomes, didn't have insurance, just figured it was a horrible toothache, didn't bother to go in to get it fixed because that's, what, $400 or $500 to go in and get a toothache looked at. Didn't realize it was life-threatening and died.
And mine was even worse than that. Mine didn't hurt.
Yeah.
The only reason they found it, and the only reason we knew, was that my wife changed jobs and we got dental insurance all of a sudden, and checkups were free. And so I went in and got a checkup, and they did a full mouth x-ray on me and said, "Oh my God, we got to do something about this tooth right now. You are about 3 weeks from dying of this."
Not even knowing it.
And they said, "Does it hurt?" And I'm like, no, it doesn't hurt at all.
It's because all the nerves had died, I bet.
Yeah, everything was, well, it was a previous root canal. So it had been a root canal, and so all the roots were gone. But the problem is that sometimes, and I didn't know this, sometimes root canals get reinfected. And I didn't know that. So they needed it. It had gotten all infected, and it was headed down to this blood vessel that runs along your jaw. I didn't know. It didn't hurt.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was a problem. Then they x-rayed it, and they were alarmed. I've never seen dentists get alarmed before.
Yeah, and this is stuff that just it's valuing life enough to say everybody should have access to this and not have to pay to stay alive.
Right. But there are people who are involved, and this is why I say I do believe that there are probably conspiracies going on. I just don't think it's the conspiracies they think it is. Like in this instance, there's an awful lot of money being paid by the medical departments or medical lobbyists in our government to keep us in this system. And I feel like that's why we keep getting the connection of Maoism and Marxism to socialized medicine. But I mean, really, my father just passed, but he lived 20 years longer than my mother did because my father was a vet and he had VA benefits. And so he was routinely being checked by the VA, and they caught all of his heart problems and things like that my mom would have survived on.
Your mom.
Yep. If she had been able to get routine checkups, if she had been able to do the surgery on her, on the damaged valve, that she had had heart attacks. She had had a heart attack when she was 28 years old. She knew there was a problem with that valve. When she was young and, vibrant and everything like that, having a heart attack is probably a sign that you've got a problem. But, and she knew what the problem was, but it cost $64,000 to fix that valve. So she didn't, and she died. My dad lived another 20 years. with just as bad a heart, if not worse. And all because he was on socialized medicine. So something to think about, which, by the way, I never brought that up to my dad because my dad, that wouldn't fly well.
No.
He was against socialized medicine to begin with because he didn't want us to get into socialism, and then, you know, everybody would be shot and thrown in graves and stuff. What I love is the death squads on socialized medicine, because it's like, well, wait a minute. Insurance companies routinely tell me I can't do X, Y, or Z. It'd be for my health. Why are those not death squads or considered death squads? You know?
Yep. Well, we are past our
over our time. Lynn, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
Say hi to Murdoch for me. And we will continue on and see you later. I don't know if we'll have Chelsea back next week. I hope we all have Chelsea back next week.
Well, you know, it's we have to roll every week to see if she appears, and it's
right. And
it's like different random things constantly get in the way.
It's like a random encounter thing.
It's like the opposite. Yeah. Well, she's become a random encounter. We have to.
She's a random encounter now
to see if she's randomly going to show up because she wants to be here.
Whenever we get, you know, we roll on the random encounter and we get like earthquake or something like that.
Right.
That's what sucks. I hate that.
But if she's here, she wanted to talk about some more Disney issues and such, which I think will give us time to look into it, because what she brought up, I'm noticing.
Boy, she brought up some stuff, didn't she?
Yeah, but from what I'm finding, I think it's not 100% solidified, but so it's worth looking into and still worth talking about whether it's confirmed or just alleged.
Yeah, so that's a rough one. So, well, we're going to go on ahead and head on out for the day. Thank you for joining us, all of you people. I see that we had some other people who are watching as well. So thank you to all of you guys. And we'll talk to you next week. I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.